One of the next visual things that I use all the time are borders. And borders are really the most helpful thing because you might not think they're helpful, but they're really great to sort of help separate text out. As a perfect example, I'm going to use the border attribute. So I'm going to go into my great ID they created, and I'm going to use border. And here's where I have an ability to actually add much more detail. You notice that there's a lot more attributes. There's top, left, bottom, right. There's also border spacing and images and radius. A lot of things like radius and collapse might not work on other browsers, but really the basic attributes that I want in borders are the width, the spacing, sometimes I can get in, and the color. So in this case, I actually am going to use a basic attribute of border, which again, this is the consolidated shortcut, which is I'm going to add the space, the type of width, 1 pix, solid, and the color, red. And you notice that just rolled off my tongue really quickly. And this is because the reason why is I use this for QAing all the time. I always use this line whenever I'm checking spacing on things. It's really one of the things I always do. If I always want to check, let's say, that the nav links are working correctly, I'll come back here, and now I can check my nav links just to make sure that the margin is working correctly. One of the things I always use all the time, if you wanted to use the border attribute without the shortcut, you can actually come in and say border space. I can use width, and that would be, I don't know, 2 pixels. I reload the page. Of course, nothing happens because I've got a squiggly character here. And nothing's going to happen because I actually haven't established a color attribute or any other notice. So I'm going to say, pretty much border. I'm going to say color. I'm going to say red. Close it again. Let's set the border line type attribute. And that is style. And that is solid. Again, default is solid. So let's reload, and here you go. There's a nice big border. If I really, really wanted to and get kind of crazy here, I can actually reload it so that it's 4 pixels. Again, not the prettiest thing in the world, but again, I use this all the time just to double check. I'll get rid of this right here. Let's keep that nice and clean. I'll even maybe keep this special consolidated line. I'll talk about consolidating in a further chapter, but I really use this all the time. I really like the border attribute. If I really did want to check it, again, let's see to make sure that my header 1 and my header 2s have the right spacing. I can sneak that in there really quickly just to double check that my headers are looking correctly. Now I can see the margin and the padding at work. I can see the padding in between the headers. I can see the margins between one. Usually this is a good way for me to take measurements to make sure things are positioned exactly where I want them. Be careful that when I actually apply the border of 1 or 2, I'm actually adding 1 or 2 pixels to the top of this in the positioning. So just kind of be careful with it. Make sure that it's there. With great power comes great responsibility. People that I work with and a lot of developers laugh at me because they'll know that I've touched a piece of code because they'll see that border 1 pix solid red and they'll say, oh, Adrian's been QAing CSS before. So again, always something that I always check on. Again, the border attribute at work, really, really, really simple. It's a really, really great attribute to work on. And one of the nice things about it is, let's say if I didn't want to use a silly border attribute and I really wanted to just make a line underneath this navigation, I could actually use border bottom 4 pix, reload the page, and now I've drawn a line in CSS. And here's where you can really start thinking about looking at this and saying, wow, that does look like a navigation bar. And wow, that really does allow me to add a color attribute and a line attribute into something that's really fully dynamic. If I wanted to change let's say, the left attribute into something border 6, solid. Let's do 333. It's a nice gray. And reload. I can now start drawing things within borders. So this is really the nice thing, is I can start using borders to start drawing lines in between things. And this is really the exciting part. Let's say if I really wanted to draw a line in the body on here. So I had a 2 pixel line. I can actually go up to the body tag. I can say, let's say border top is 4 pixels red. I reload the page. Here's my border on top. And if I wanted to actually push it down, I could add some margin attribute. Margin top is 50 pixels. I reload it, and now I have a nice line on the top that's being painted by the browser. So there's no images, there's no artwork. I'm literally just using basic lines and the border to actually draw things, which is great because it makes my web page load faster.